I think one of the insights that I'd like to kind of remark upon is, and it would be an obstacle, a potential obstacle for developing banks towards social goals, is how ownership structures work. And as a CEO, and it's not talking about my own experience, I'm sure it's the same for the CEOs of all Islamic banks practically, is how do you move from one to the other, where you've got an explicit goal because of the ownership structure. They're usually owned by stock market listed entities, or they've got an explicit profit goal. How do you move to a wider set of socially purposeful goals? You've got this. You've got a profit goal. How do you then direct your activity to socially purposeful goals? Right? So how do you direct? I don't know. For example, in the UK, to financing housing association, if you want to alleviate homelessness, or to financing a charity that might be actively involved in a sector of society tackling a social problem. Now that's quite difficult for a number of reasons that Rafi mentioned in terms of the way banks are operating today, right? So first of all, the goal, not exclusively, but mostly focuses on that stakeholder, the shareholder today. And actually, when you look at why Islamic banks were given a license, at least in this country, part of it was to sort of tackle financial exclusion and social, and thereby social exclusion. Somewhere along the line, aspects of that goal kind of just dissipated a bit. Yes, so fundamentally, we have contract structures that embody more social justice because of some elements of risk and reward. Great. That's necessary, it's not sufficient. You've got negative screening, i.e. we avoid sectors, but we don't proactively target a sector for social reasons. We just say, yeah, okay, that'll make things worse, but we don't say, right, let's go after, I don't know, housing associations or charities or whatever, right? So that's problematic. So then you say, well, okay, can I build in goals for the other stakeholders that Omar mentioned in his speech, consumers and employees and the community at large? There's a cost. Shareholders have to accept that at one level, you may not get the profits of a profit-maximizing organization. At a consumer level, you may not pay the cheapest price as an employee, because you're working in a purposeful organization that's trying to do more than just generate profit. You might accept that I'll take a lower salary because I feel a deeper satisfaction in what I do. Now, of course, there's this premium curve that exists, consumer psychology. How far will you go? How far will you pay? How much of a salary cut will you take? How much profit will you, relinquish? And I think these are questions at the operating level that have to be tackled. And maybe for later, I'll just mention it now, so I'm conscious it's the. One of the ways is for social capital to start owning financial institutions. If social capital, so people who currently give to charities or currently give to charitable endowments, they start owning or initiating financial institutions, then there is no conflict. The social goal is thereby through the owners. You target consumers who believe in those goals. You fund projects where social entrepreneurship isn't required, and it becomes very much a virtuous circle, right? And I think that's if you just look at the way banking works, where your pound of capital can give you 6 times the amount of finance just through risk weighting ratios. Well, then that pound that you currently donate to a charity could be giving you 6 times the impact through a banking channel, a bank that's owned by a social institution.
I mean, I think you raise a really important question there around sort of profit versus purpose. And again, sort of looking at the wider market, there's a lot going on around that in terms of, the UN has done a lot of work on fiduciary duty to sort of show that actually it is a fiduciary duty to consider the impact on particularly environment. I think environment is so much easier than social because with environment you have what I think most people would say is an under-recognised cost to balance sheets from not doing anything about climate change. So actually investing in something that mitigates or prevents climate change will impact in a positive way financially. But interestingly, for the same point, when I talk to several UN PRI investors and say, how much yield are you prepared to sacrifice in order to invest in a green bond or a social bond? I think you probably know the answer, which is zero. There is a small pricing differential when you see things, I'm sure you can talk better than me, that see things trading, but as yet people are not really putting that money where the mouth is. Sorry, you wanted to come in on that?
Yes, Claire, just want to get back to Sultan's about the point of profit versus social return here. I still believe that banking institutions can still design products where there is, the opportunity of creating markets that's profitable. The social services sectors, like the education and housing, creating housing, affordable housing, for instance, creating jobs in different sectors, it still can be profitable. What are the issues here? I don't see any issue or challenge for you as a banker to balance between
profitable, yes, but maximising profit versus an acceptable return. And without going into too much detail, I've faced that dilemma, right?
Sure.
So you can maybe go for double-digit returns, but you're going to have to sacrifice some of your other goals, or you can go for a good return and still do both, right?
I mean, I agree as well. If you move out of other sectors, if you look at corporates, and I think I was talking earlier, I think it was Owen who mentioned BlackRock, and big corporations are buying into this. Sometimes the leadership's a little bit challenged in working it out. They haven't got all the data they require really to absolutely prove that there's an impact on their stock price and so on. But they are working out that actually, even though there's not an immediate impact on the balance sheet, engaging with social situations and creating impact has a positive effect on them and their stakeholders. And I think as Sultan has just illustrated very well, the problem in banking is that the stakeholder weighting is different. Yeah. And particularly in Islamic finance, we have sizable Islamic banks that are quite traditional with their output and their product. And there I agree with Claire. If you look at our traditional Islamic banks, I think they have the suite of instruments available to them that will make them quite effective, regulatory permissions prevailing to move into issuance of sukuk for environmental considerations and so on. And we've got all sorts of situations and transactions that I described that I think demonstrate that. But when we look at impact, we've got to change the model a little bit, and that's where we have a problem, because a lot of the banks that we have at the moment will find it hard to engage